Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm really excited to have two really special guests on. So we have Katie Kennedy, who is the VP of Marketing and Communications, as well as Caitlyn Denham, who is the Senior Manager of Events and Partnerships. And they're both with the Austin Parks Foundation. And they have a gala called Party for the Parks. And why we have them here today is they have a very unique set of circumstances as to when, how, and why they host their event. So imagine you're attending one of the world's best music festivals in Austin City Limits. And anyone who's ever been to it before knows that there's two weekends. There is weekend one and weekend two. And in between that, the Austin Parks Foundation holds a gala within the ACL space. So we're going to kind of talk about all the fun things about communicating that out, logistics, and all those things that are unique. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed with an event, we're talking to two people who are absolute pros at grace under pressure. And with that, Katie, Caitlin, welcome. And I'm really thrilled to have you both here today.
Thank you. We're so excited to talk about this.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Katie, share with us what the mission of the Austin Parks Foundation is.
Sure. Austin Parks Foundation has been around since 1992, and it's our goal and mission to fill the resource and funding gap that the city faces to make our nearly 400 parks and trails and green spaces accessible, safer, better for all Austinites. And we do that in a number of ways through park improvement projects, innovative programming, our volunteer program, events like Party for the Parks, and really working with the community to improve all of those park spaces. And since our inception in 1992, we have invested more than $85 million into our parks.
Wow, that's a lot. That is a lot of money to invest. So anyone who goes to ACL, it just doesn't plop out of the sky that way. Katie,
Exactly.
Caitlin, and the entire Austin Parks Foundation family is what allows all of us to enjoy large scale events like that, Bazilka tree lighting, and a whole other host of things that the park's capable of. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And what I always find fascinating and interesting, and I always like to talk about with guests, is how everyone gets involved with organizations because everyone gets involved in different ways. So, Caitlin, talk a little bit about how you initially got involved with this organization, and then Katie, will hear from you.
I've been a nonprofit for a little while, and it just so happens that there was kind of an opening that popped up at the Austin Parks Foundation, and I had had some colleagues, including Katie Kennedy, who had moved over and had nothing but amazing things to say. And so, what I really love about Austin Parks Foundation, one, is just all the incredible work that they do, touching so many things because parks are such an important space here in Austin, but it's also that Austin Parks Foundation really cares about its employees and, making sure that they are investing in their employees and wanting them to stay in for the long haul. And so that to me was such an amazing combination because you don't find that a lot, especially in nonprofit. So that's how I got my start at Austin Parks Foundation.
Fantastic. And Katie, love to hear from you. And also, talk about when you find the right fit for yourself that you encourage other people that you've worked with before, like Caitlin, to come over. Because I don't
Yeah.
think we're 120, 30 episodes in on this show, and we haven't had that come up yet. So I really am
Yeah.
curious and want to hear more about that.
Of course, yes. So I actually started my career in television news. I was an executive producer at a news station. I'm from Pennsylvania, so I worked there for about a decade, and then got into communications and PR, and then moved to Austin and worked with Caitlin at another nonprofit. And then this position opened. I've been a hiker. I'm really into the outdoors. I have two dogs, and we love going to Walnut Creek Park, and so it just seemed like a really good fit. And like Caitlin said, it's just a wonderful organization that truly cares about their employees. And so when Caitlin was sort of starting to look around for another position, I really encouraged her because I could share all those great things about Austin Parks Foundation. And so it's just really great because we worked so well at our other organization and it's really translated to APF as well.
I love hearing that, and I love hearing, that people have good relationships and they can bring them to bring them to other organizations, especially when you both have spoken very passionately about green spaces. And I'd love for each of you, starting with Katie, where does your passion for green spaces and, your love for hiking, like you were talking about, where does all that come from?
Well, I grew up in the country in Pennsylvania, and so I lived about a half mile from the Appalachian Trail. And so we would spend lots of time hiking out there. And when I got older, I got more serious about hiking. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro a couple years ago. I just really love being outdoors. And that's part of the reason why I moved to Austin, because there are, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, there's nearly 400 parks in the city. So a lot of a lot of Austin living is spent outdoors. And, that's part of the reason I was drawn to live here. So it's just really cool to be able to be part of an organization that is inspiring other people to want to move to Austin because of that same reason.
Absolutely. And Caitlin, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and for me, I do really love the outdoors, but I am not the traditional park goer. And I think what really drew me to this organization and what's really kind of like where I found my passion with this is we know that people with kids, people with dogs, I mean, that is that's who you think of when you think of parks. Well, I fit in that not I have a cat and I am not I do not have children. So my whole goal is just really looking at how do we get people who are not traditional park people out into our parks, whether that's fitness activities, whether it's just a social engagement type of activity. So it's really kind of thinking of what else can we do to bring more people out into the parks that don't traditionally just gravitate towards them. So for me, that's really, really important.
Absolutely. And, the thing is, green spaces are something that people can enjoy, whether you are hiking, every weekend like Katie may be, or someone like Caitlin, where, there may be a festival or there may be, a communal or friend gathering that draws you to the space. But that's the beauty about things like parks and green spaces is they really do bring people together. And in speaking of spaces and in speaking of Zilker Park in particular, so you all do your gala party for the parks in between weekends 1 and 2 of ACL. And when I say it's in Zilker Park in ACL, I mean it's in Zilker Park in ACL. So, Caitlin, talk a little bit about where inside of that, for anyone who's familiar with ACL, I think they'll be blown away by where you actually are physically holding this event.
Yes, so it is truly in the middle of ACL. Over the last couple of years, we've tried to focus it more into a specific space in ACL just so it didn't feel so vastly overwhelming to just kind of be in the middle of this giant festival ground. So we've been holding it at the Tito's tent the last couple of years, which is kind of between the two big stages. And we're able to spread out and we put up additional tents during this event. But what's nice is just kind of keeping it into one area so it doesn't feel like it's so all encompassing and there's just too many people, but still giving people that kind of space to wander around the grounds. But we do try to, keep it within the Tito's area just so that we can kind of make sure nobody accidentally gets lost out there because it does, the lighting is there's not a lighting all over. So we try to make sure it's centralized so that people are all engaged. And then obviously with our performer, we want everyone to be together.
And we need to highlight here, and I had the good fortune of going to this last year. When I say there are 400 people there, it is literally the 400 people involved with this gala and nobody else. So it's not like, oh, this is kind of some VIP cordon off thing. It is just, you all doing that. So, Katie, I'd love for you to kind of address. So, talk about how you partner with an organization like ACL to do something like that because and we'll get into the other things later, but let's just kind of talk about the partnership perspective. Katie, I'd like for you to start, and then Caitlin, from a partnership expertise perspective, I'd like your opinion as well.
Sure. So we have a fantastic relationship with C3 Presents, who organizes ACL, and that is something that has been long before our time at APF. We're celebrating our 20th year working with them this year, so it's really a long-standing partnership that I mean, we just lean on them for so much. They lean on us as well for a lot of the sustainability aspects of the festival. But they have been such a fantastic partner for us. We just recently held a check presentation. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but a percentage of ticket sales that is generated from ACL is then donated back to Austin Parks Foundation, and we put that directly into the ground to, revitalize even more parks. And so just this past week, in April, no, was it? No, in May, we received a check for $8.4 million. So that when you buy a ticket to ACL, you're also supporting Austin's Parks. So that's part of our partnership with C3 Presents. But we work with them on so many things with our gala, from the logistical side of things that Caitlyn can talk about, but we also work with them to secure the artist that performs at our gala. So really from beginning to end, we're working with C3 on those things.
That's amazing. And Caitlin, I'd love for you to chime in now as well.
Yeah, so with C3, they put on the entire ACL festival. So thankfully, a lot of the pieces for our event are already there. Tent, stage, a lot of the lighting and sound equipment. We're very lucky to have an amazing partnership with Tito's as well, so that we can utilize that tent and their VIP space to kind of keep our event in a more centralized space. But truly, we do also work with another coordinating company, Mueller Scott Concepts, who really does also assist a lot with logistics during the day of, specifically to make sure that we're communicating with all the C3 staff, because they are all there. It's, not only are they attending the event as fun, but we do have a lot of them working the event as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's only scratching the surface. And I promise folks we're going to go a little bit deeper. But before I do, Katie, I'd like to ask, so, when you have something this unique, talk about how that encourages donors to come and attend each year, and how it's an effective way to get potential new donors to come in who want to give back more than just the portion of their ticket price from something like ACL.
Sure. I think that because our gala is so unique, it lends itself to people talking about it, saying, I went to this event last week. It was so exciting and different. And, that really gets other people excited about it. I think we do a lot of, you know, drawing people in through our social media that we use to promote the event, and we do a lot of ads and things like that. But I really think that word of mouth is really what gets people excited. We also we have a lot of sponsorship opportunities, so those sponsors are bringing people that they want to see this gala, and so those might be people that aren't really familiar with what we do. And so when they see the program and they watch our mission moment video and see all the different ways that we support the community and support our parks, I think that really gets them excited. And plus, it's so cool to be able to have a photo that you took at ACL on the festival grounds where you're one of only a couple hundred people there. It's just so unique. And I think that really gets people talking.
It really is. And no, it's not AI generated. If you see a photo,
No.
it may be, but there is a very high probability that it is not AI generated and it's an actual human, not a bot.
Exactly.
So there's that as well. So Caitlin, you were talking about, how you partner with multiple event partners to really kind of make this happen. And, one of the things, and this was kind of the first thing when I did it, having gone to ACL before, is how do you do load in and tear down when, and anyone who's done ACL, you do a lot of walking when you go to ACL, like if you're going there on a festival weekend. So, and there's lots of security and checkpoints and pathways and all that. So, Caitlin, I'd love for you to share a little bit about the process and how that works. And then maybe at the end, just share what advice would you give to somebody to kind of just not overreact to things that may happen during event load in and tear down.
Yes, so it is a different type of load in and load out than a traditional gala. Like I said, thankfully, a lot of our big components, like the tent and stage and all that, are already there since they're there for both weekends. But our with our planning company that we work with, we really it's a lot of communication between C3, the Parks and Recreation Department, and our team just to make sure we know what days. There are very specific load in days and load in times to get those tents set up. Everything has to happen, obviously, that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in between ACLs, just because otherwise they're loading in and out for the actual festival. And we really do, I would say it's the communication piece is the absolute key because there are a lot of things and we do have to change plans pretty quickly. You just have to be open to that because obviously weather is a factor. Sometimes if we're thinking we're going to be bringing in a car, if it's raining, that's not coming onto the grass. So there are a lot of rules and considerations, especially when working with a city-owned space. So I think the biggest thing that I would recommend for anyone interested in broaching this type of event is to really make sure you have good contacts and good open communication with all of your partners. We never, we've worked very hard, specifically with the last couple of years that we've been on the team to really make sure that we are treating everybody with respect and understanding all the rules and regulations that we all have to abide by. It's not just what can C3 do, what can we do? We're all working together to make sure that this load in and load out is as seamless as possible within the current footprint that is already there because we do realize that as soon as our event is over, the next weekend of ACL is happening.
And I don't want to say that's pressure, but I mean, that's just a lot of moving parts in a big, giant 18-wheeler tractor trailer truck kind of sort of situation there.
Yes. And I would say, I mean, you have to find the right partners for all of these things and just making sure that you know that everything that you're telling your partner, they are taking into consideration and making sure that they're doing.
Absolutely. And, those were all great pieces of advice and just how important communication is. And Katie, the next question is a little bit more communications focused, and I want to direct it to you. And that is because ACL is such a large space and because, it's between the two main stages, talk a little bit about the communication process with guests to make sure that they're getting to the
Hmm.
right location because Zilker Park's really big and anyone who's gone to ACL, it's large and it can feel overwhelming and intimidating. So talk a little bit about how you do that, but not just that, but also how you all create a seamless, efficient experience for guests. So like for example, like last year when I went, there were carts that were available so that when you
Yes.
went to check in, you were wheeled over there. So share a little bit about kind of that process for guests to communicate and get them to where they need to be efficiently.
Yeah, so I think in recent years we have switched to a shuttle service. And so really the key is communicating where you get to the shuttle. And once you're on the shuttle, you're good. And we will get you where you need to go. We'll take you right to check in, and then the carts will take you down to the actual event. So I think really it's just about making sure those emails are going out with the know before you go information. Everybody gets a schedule event so they know what time everything is happening so you don't miss the part that you want to make sure you're there for. And then just making sure everybody has a map of where that shuttle is. And from there, we kind of take over and you just have to enjoy yourself. As far as the seamless of, making it as seamless as possible once they arrive, we're making sure that we're communicating. We have a DJ who will share messaging about when things are happening. Make sure you move to the tent. Make sure you're going over here. We have staff in our pre-party area. So if you're a sponsor, you get to attend the pre-party. We make sure we communicate when the auction's happening so you can come out. So you're just getting all that information. Really, all you have to do is show up and make sure you keep an ear out for those messages, and you'll be able to see everything that you came to see.
And imagine that's all you ever had to do if you were going to Zilker during ACL, people. I mean, that
Just
that that that's like a
get to the bus.
dream.
Yeah, that's
I mean, there are
it.
people that pay tens of thousands of dollars for platinum badges, and it's not that easy. I mean, that's
Exactly.
that really is something. So, from Caitlin, from a logistics perspective, what advice would you give? Because there's multiple logistical processes to get people there. There's the shuttle to the cart. What piece of advice would you give to an organization looking to create a seamless entrance or check-in process for guests when there's going to be more than one touch point?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the first piece is the plan. In Austin, one of the biggest things is, where are you going to park? Because that is a shortage everywhere. And so that is the first piece that I always look at, no matter what event you're doing. And Zilker is especially important because there is no parking down there. And during ACL, they shut down even more of it. So really having a plan for how many guests do you expect to have? Where can that many cars, knowing that some people will Uber, will get a lift down, making sure you have a good point for drop off there and communicating that with, the city and whoever else needs to know which roads are open or closed, depending, especially for ACL, things get shut down. Once you have that, it's very important to just make sure if you have a big space that you're trying to get people to, how are you going to get them from point A to point B? You may have the shuttle for us. We can get them from the parking lot at Barton Creek to Zilker, but then it's still a nice little walk over to where our event is. So how can you help those who maybe can't walk that far, especially when it is warm outside? So just thinking through what pieces do you need to have, what other vendors do you need to include and costs that you need to add to your budget. And then the biggest thing is kind of already what Katie mentioned, communicating. You can't just say it once. You got to communicate it multiple times. We'll have multiple know before you go. We have multiple versions of it going to sponsors, going to ticket purchasers, going to our volunteers, because you have to think about where are your volunteers parking, where are your staff parking, where are your vendors parking. So I would just say really it's looking at it as a big picture and then slowly going, inch by inch into, okay, so they're going to get here and then they're going to get to point B and then they're going to get to C. Just making sure you have all of your bases covered.
What I appreciate about that is you were talking about that there's multiple different ways that you're kind of communicating, but also you may do the same messaging in slightly different ways. Just
Mhm.
because it's funny, you would think, okay, this is a perfect piece of communication and everyone's going to do what I'm going to do. And unfortunately, that's not how it works. And when you have the logistical things that you all have, people just they respond best in certain ways, and it may be text for some, it may be email for others. Some may actually have to pick up the phone and call. It's just really kind of understanding and communicating that, and that's what you all do so thoughtfully. And Katie, I'd love for you, just as a communications lead, share any more additional insights about that piece.
Yeah, so we found that, leading up to the event, we share the emails pretty consistently. And then the day of, we switch to text because we think you're probably not at home. You're probably out getting to where you need to go. And so that's whenever we switch to text. And then throughout the night, when things are happening, we'll also send a text. So if the live auction is starting in 10 minutes, we'll send a text. If the food line is about to close and you want to get some last minute snacks, we'll send a text. So it's really just meeting people where they are with how they like to communicate.
Absolutely. And, one thing I want to turn to next is, obviously music. And, we don't necessarily, because we've had this happen on more than one occasion on this show where we talk about a performer and then something happens and they don't show up. So we're going to kind of talk about the process here, because what's unique about you all is that you've literally got dozens of musicians from all around the world coming in to a space over a period of time, and you're right in between it. So talk a little bit about the selection process, because you all actually have a large pool of world-class talent that you can use. So talk a little bit about how the event committee and the organization work together to
Mhm.
select that musical performer. And Katie, will start with you, and then Caitlin, you can chime in.
Sure. So we're at the point right now where we're kind of gauging interest and th looking at the list of artists that are performing at ACL. And we don't have to pick someone who is performing at ACL. It just kind of, why wouldn't you? I mean, they're there and they're looking for something to do in between the two weekends, and it just kind of makes sense. But if there's a strong thought about another artist who's not on the list, we can consider them as well. But we start by sort of gauging internally who we make a list of who we would like to see perform. We also have our host committee, and Caitlyn gauges their interest as well. I also like to lurk around on the ACL Festival subreddit and just see kind of the temperature of what people are thinking and who they're liking, and just kind of get some ideas from there. And then we take our list to C3 and we meet with a couple people there and just kind of ask them, who's in our price range, who would be a good fit, what are you hearing? We also want to make sure, it's kind of hard to do, but sometimes artists will perform at different venues throughout that week off, in between the two weekends. And we want to make sure we're trying to get someone who isn't, performing the very next day that someone could go there and see them. We want it to be sort of a unique opportunity to see someone in this space. And then if they're available, we book them. And then, that's that. But we've had some great artists over the past few years. We've had Black Pumas, Spoon. This past year, we had Orville Peck, which was really cool. So, it's really thinking about what our donors would like to see. And I think it can really go in two directions, at least in my perspective. Do you want someone who would offer a little bit of nostalgia for our group, or would you like someone who's on the cutting edge and is like about to blow up, maybe? So we'll see who we get this year. We're still kind of figuring it out right now.
That's amazing and good advice on kind of how to vet and just really understand what your committee wants and what the organization wants and finding that fusion. And Caitlin, I'd love for you to add, any additional things, especially since you may be liaising like with the committee and all that, like Katie just had mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me when I'm talking to the committee and even our staff is just kind of like, think about who our donors are, who we are hoping to get into the room, or onto the festival grounds, for the event. Because we don't want to alienate anybody, so we don't want to get somebody that, only one group of people might like. So we do try to be as, out of the box and thinking of like who appeals to the broadest spectrum, that we can, but is also a good draw. So really, like what Katie says, it's taking all of these suggestions, chatting with C3 to see who's available and would be, in our price range. And then also, like, I know one thing we're trying to kind of look to is how can we get that artist to be a little bit more engaged, maybe help provide something for like our live auction, just to help us raise those funds that we really do need to help continue the work that we're doing.
Absolutely. And I want to ask another question to kind of piggyback off of the performer piece, and that is, what advice would you give to an organization looking to have, hire a headline musical performer, and especially someone who's high profile slash famous perform at their event?
Oh, that's such a hard question because really the answer is have a good relationship with someone who can book that for you. And that's sort of where we get lucky. It's really about that relationship that's been built over years and years. But I really think that's the key, unfortunately. It's hard to say how else to manage it because we've never had to manage it any other way.
But I'm glad that you bring that up because it also goes into the importance of having a good committee and a
Absolutely.
committee because there's three type, we talk about this. There's three types of capital. There's financial capital, of course, but there's also something like there's also social capital and human capital. And you want to make sure that you've got all three of those capital types in the community because odds are the person who's probably trying to book a headline musician at ACL, it may not be the major donor. It may quite frankly be kind of a more socially, or humanly connected person
Mhm.
within the community.
Yeah, and I think Caitlin's done a really good job with our host committee getting those people that are kind of they do everything. So if we're looking for someone who can help us with an auction item, they're able to. If we have some who work in the entertainment industry who could connect us if we didn't have this partnership. So I think that's a really good point.
Absolutely. Caitlin, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think Katie covered it pretty well there.
Fantastic. I thought so too, but you never know. So Katie, talk a little bit about, because we've talked some about marketing and communication strategy, but talk about how you create a strategy that appeals both to existing donors that you've had for a while, as well as new donors that you're trying to recruit in.
Sure. So I think one of the things that we like to do is generate excitement with the band announcement. And so that's a way that we can really try to draw in new donors who might be I mean, I know when I see something that's about to be revealed, I don't really care what it is. I want to know. I want to know what's going to be revealed. So I'm going to follow that and I'm going to see what it is. But I think that's been a great way to draw in more donors and more people interested just in what we do. We definitely lean on our social media a lot. Once we know who the band is, we like to do some fun videos to get people excited about that. And then existing donors, we want to make sure that we keep them on our early bird list so that they get the leg up of knowing who the band is first. They get the opportunity to purchase their tickets first, just to make sure they understand how much we appreciate them and want them to come back.
Those are all excellent, excellent pieces of advice. And I love how you make the announcement of a band kind of a thing and an event, because that there is no better way to draw people in. And the great thing about your event is once you draw them in, they're going to want to come back because it's like, oh my God, I'm in here by myself with 300 people.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
want to do that every year. So I mean, it's, there sometimes, sometimes you have to do an awful lot to keep those new people engaged. And sometimes based on the structure of your event, it can the organization can speak for itself because people see what the organization does in preserving the park space, and they're there in kind of a unique way. And it's wonderful to see how those tie together.
Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. And I want to talk a little bit about, and Caitlin, can you talk about what guests can expect to experience at this year's Party for the Park? Just tease maybe a couple of things that people can expect.
I mean, first of all, it is going to be a VIP ACL experience. As we've kind of alluded to, you get ACL grounds to yourself with a couple hundred people, which is very different than walking in on any normal ACL evening or day. We are bringing back Taco Deli, so we will have the famous Taco Deli there, but really. I just think for people that haven't been to Party for the Parks, and even those who have, we continue to build each year on the experiences, what worked, what didn't work, and we're really getting into a nice rhythm of this is really going to be a party from the moment you step on your shuttle until you get out of the shuttle and get back into your car at the end of the night. We really want to bring that festival vibe for the entire evening and make sure that you really do feel like you're having that VIP experience that not everyone gets to have at ACL.
That's amazing. It's hashtag a festival just for you.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's exactly what it is and what you're offering. And it's just really cool. And I know we're coming up on time, but I always like to end with this one question. We'll start with Katie, and then Caitlin, you can have the last word. And that is, what advice would you give to someone looking to plan their first gala or signature fundraising event?
That's a great question. I think it's going to other galas and experiencing different. I mean, when you use the word gala, I think it's kind of funny to use it for Party for the Parks just because when you're there, it doesn't feel like a gala. It really is a party. It is a gala, it is our biggest fundraiser of the year. But I think that there are just so many different kinds of galas. And so if the more you can experience, you can as a guest say, okay, I liked this, I didn't like this, and really kind of hone in on what would work for your organization. So I think really just experiencing it is the best way to find out what you like and what will work for you.
Such good advice, and research is so important because, as anyone will tell you, and Caitlin can attest to this, there is no such thing as an original event idea. You take
Exactly.
the 55 other things that you've seen from 100 other events and you combine them to make your own unique special thing. And such good advice, Katie. And Caitlin, you have the last word.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I echo what Katie said and really look at your organization, your mission, and the donors that you have, and kind of cater to them and to what you need. I mean, not, as you said, one gala is not a one size fits all for every organization. And to really think about what can you do that would still make sense for your organization and mission and the donors that you know are going to be there to support you, but how do you make it unique so that it's not like every single other gala that all the other nonprofits are putting on? So it's definitely a combination of going to different things, but also making sure you know who your audience is, because that is very important. This type of gala that we do is not the right fit for every single nonprofit, but for us, it makes perfect sense. So that, it's definitely not something that every nonprofit can do, but I don't think every nonprofit necessarily also just needs to think, oh, it's a ballroom evening dinner type thing. We know that it works, but it's tried and true, but there's ways to mix it up and to find new ways. So it's really just looking and seeing what works best for who you were trying to serve and appeal to.
That is a mic drop moment. And just listen to what Caitlin said, people. Not every room is meant for every person, and that's okay. You want to appeal to the community, but there's going to be certain events that are going to appeal to one part of your audience more than others, and that's perfectly okay. It's what allows the experience to be cohesive and fun for everybody who's there. And I mean, it was such sage advice. And, Katie, Caitlin, thank you both so much for joining us today. I mean, this was such a fun informative conversation and really probably one of the most unique events I've ever been to. So I really appreciate you both taking the time.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. And Party for the Parks, benefiting the Austin Parks Foundation, will be held on October 8th, 2025 at Silker Park in Austin, Texas. For more information, please visit austinparks.org. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.